Alrighty, hello and welcome to my capstone presentation. My name is Anneliese Hasenbalg, and this summer I worked with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, at their Alaska Fisheries Science Center. I conducted historical research about a prominent fisheries conservation advocate named Miller Freeman. Freeman spent most of his life passing early fisheries conservation legislation and was involved with all levels of the American government. More recently, his legacy of xenophobia and racism has drawn attention as he was a vocal anti-Japanese advocate in the early and mid-1900s. The exhibit my research contributed to seeks to probe these two legacies left behind by Freeman and examine how people's platforms can both directly and indirectly impact others and communities. The United States historically has issues with adequately addressing social and environmental justice problems, which can be seen in cases such as the Love Canal incident, the COVID pandemic, and even the Black Lives Matter movement. As the climate continues to worsen across the country, it is important that the government begins to prepare to address environmental issues in advance. It is essential that the government establishes new environmental policy to aid communities that will bear the brunt of the burden of climate change. Law is often uses precedent in its decision making, and I feel that future environmental policy should do the same. My research question is, how can the government better support its underserved communities that have previously been affected by environmental issues? To answer this, I conducted a case study analysis of the Japanese redress movement of the 1970s and 80s, as well as the Flint, Michigan water crisis. Both of these issues examine relationships between underserved communities and the federal government and have resulting legal events that could be used to aid future environmental policy. The Japanese redress movement grew from the civil rights movement of the 1960s and highlighted the incarceration of Japanese Americans during the Second World War. The Japanese American Citizens League, or JACL, was a leading organization in the demand for redress, demanding a formal apology from the government as well as $25,000 per person who was incarcerated. From their lobbying, the United States government established the Commission of Wartime Internment and Relocation of Civilians, or CWRIC. The commission held many hearings for survivors of internment camps to speak on their experiences and conducted scholarly research on the matter. The commission's conclusion was that Japanese Americans' rights had in fact been violated, and their findings ultimately became the Civil Liberties Act, which was signed by President Ronald Reagan in 1988. The CLA issued an official apology from the government and paid $20,000 to individual detainees. This act is lauded as both a success for the Japanese American community, but also a reminder that the key to fighting for civil rights is to always remain vigilant. Staying vigilant is also a key from the Flint, Michigan water crisis. This well-known issue began in 2014 as the emergency manager appointed to the city of Flint decided to change the water source for the community to the Flint River in an effort to cut costs. The water from this source was not properly treated, and this caused lead from the city's water infrastructure to leak into the water on its way to Flint's residents' homes. Residents noticed this quickly and raised their concerns to their elected officials, but none of their concerns were acted upon. This continued for some time until the state of Michigan ordered water samples to be taken from the affected homes. However, these samples were never collected properly. Despite the fact that the water looked safe on paper, it was very obvious to the Flint residents that their community was unsafe. After many years of advocacy, the Flint community finally reached settlement in 2021 for $626 million. After the attorney's fees were capped at 25% earlier this year in 2022, money is slowly being distributed into the community in an effort to construct new, safer water infrastructure and to the families in need who were affected by this crisis. The emphasis here, however, is placed on slowly, as a significant portion of the Flint community still does not have access to clean water in their homes. Hopefully, the remaining money will be distributed expediently to the families to help the Flint community get the help that they need. From these two issues, I had three primary findings that would help the government better support its underserved communities. First, the government needs to actively seek out the opinions of those who reside in underserved communities. This is because they are often the most negatively affected and also in the position where they cannot voice their opinions in a legal fashion. For example, residents in Flint often are more concerned about where they can get their clean water from in order to shower and drink safely instead of where they can go and voice their opinions to the public the best. Secondly, the government needs to act proactively when communities ask for assistance. Flint, again, is a perfect example of this, as they asked their elected officials repeatedly for aid, but were ignored until the issue became a full-blown crisis. Finally, as seen with the Civil Liberties Act, the government needs to work to rebuild its trust and relationships with communities that it has wronged previously. And one of the best ways to do this is to begin with an honest apology. From my research, I feel that future environmental policy should create a new aid office with a focus on providing equitable aid to communities in need. First and foremost, this office would have control of an aid fund that would be established in Congress's annual budget, so then they would be able to quickly distribute it to communities that file claims. These claim forms absolutely need to be easily accessible to members of the public and also easy to fill out. If enough claims came from any particular community, this office would have the authority to establish a truth commission in an effort to provide the residents of this community, if they so choose, a platform to tell the public their story and describe what they have been experiencing. This is a way to have a primary source provide information to the public as opposed to having the issue be watered down to clickbait by the general media. Also, truth commissions can serve as an opportunity for communities to begin to process trauma that they have experienced together and begin healing. This would in turn hopefully allow the government to gain a better understanding of their constituents' lived experiences and rebuild trust between these two groups. As climate change continues to affect weather patterns, ecosystems, and human infrastructure, often for the worse, life in this country will change dramatically. By developing federal policy that could more effectively and equitably distribute aid to communities in need, the government would be prepared to address environmentally based crises. I'd like to thank Lisa Haruki-Raring, my site supervisor at NOAA, for being a fantastic mentor, Dr. Gary Handwerk, my faculty advisor, for being a fantastic resource and guiding me through my academic experience here at UW, and my parents, best friend, and partner for their support through my entire capstone experience and proofreading everything. I can't thank them enough.